Kia ora, and welcome to day 19 of Month Done and a month of mindful moments with tangling. Yesterday's tangle finished with various leaves. So in nature, what else goes with leaves? Of course, flowers and blossoms. So today I want to start off with a blossom style tangle. When I first came across the term to blossom or blossoming tangles, I didn't really understand what it meant. Blossoming tangles are ones that tend to radiate or start from a centre point and make themselves out, almost sitting on an island, perfect for popping inside an orb. They build upon themselves, usually outwardly, but sometimes in the way. And they're quite bold, and they very well often work as monotangles on a tile. But when I didn't understand the term when I first came across it, I thought that blossom was the name of a tangle, and so I went and found Blossom by Rudolf Wohlgemuth, and it's such a simple way to draw a flower. I've just kept up with it ever since. So grab your tangling pens and just choose a couple of points on your page with which to do an orb. I might do a slightly smaller one to begin with, just to show you small. You can see how big it is compared to my fingernail. And then on this side I'm going to draw a slightly bigger one. Maybe this one is the size of my fingernail. And the way I like to describe it is thinking of a head with a straight line and two legs either side and two arms heading out this way, as if somebody is trying to draw the star position. And from each of the ends of the lines I'm going to draw a curved line. Just goes from the start of one end of line around to join the next one. And these will give you our petals. If you find it slightly easier, you can rotate your piece of paper as you're going. And then I want to do some little stems that come from the centre point here. And the way I tend to do this is I'll do 3 or 4 prongs that just head out into each of those petals, and just add a bit of drama to fill in the space in between. Other people like to draw the lines going out this way and just add a little bit of rounding with your pen, just to make it a little bit more weightier in the middle. Whichever you find easiest and the smoothest way to do, feel free. But it is a good idea to just spend your time rotating your small notebook and doing the same repetitive stroke. Once we have our cute little blossom flowers, I think it almost looks like a buttercup at this point, I'm then just going to put a very straight V in between each of the petals. Again, you'll probably find it easier to just rotate your notebook and do the same repetitive stroke. Once I've done this, I'm going to fill these little V's with black ink. After you've filled them with black ink, I'm going to add an aura. The reason why I don't add the aura before filling in these blacks areas, if you go slightly over your line, it just means that you can adjust your aura after the black is down. And if it changes places slightly, that's fine too. And then at the end of each of these points, just somewhere about halfway, making that point about halfway, just pop another dot heading out, as if the top of the black arrow is pointing out. These guide dots will help you do the next stage. I tend to go this way, but you may find it easier to draw away from yourself. I'm going to go from the middle of this petal here, so the midway point, and I'm just going to come down in a curve to get to my dot. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Then I'll rotate the tile or the book round and do the same 2 strokes again. If you do want to go a little bit past your guide dot, feel free. If you've popped them in pencil, it won't matter. They'll get covered up with shading. If they're going on the inside, I'll show you the next step and how we can incorporate them. So the next step on this one is to do a tethered aura, and by this mean I start at the same point as all the other line is, but I'm just go in a little bit and in. So though it starts at the same point, they finish slightly inside. This tangle leaves you the ability that if you've got one petal that's slightly smaller than the others, you can choose to do it on the outside instead. So I'm going to give it another tethered aura here, and I notice that these three are probably slightly smaller petals than these two. So these bottom two, I'm going to do a tethered aura inside. These ones, I'm just going to go outside. Because you're coming from the same tethered aura point, it doesn't matter which way you go. It just gives you a chance to just adjust your blossom petal. And the final part of this tangle is to add some pollen. And for this, I'm just going to do a straight line with an orb. Then I'll add 2 little extra lines with some more pollen on the end. And I'll repeat this same repetitive stroke in between all of those petal leaves. And the last step of this tangle is what I feel makes it. I hope you think so too. Inside your center orb, we're going to draw another orb. And inside that orb, we're just going to draw a little offset orb, and then fill the remainder black. I think that center orb just finishes the tangle off. On this side, I'm just going to draw a slightly bigger version. You perhaps might want to offset your lines the other way up. Either way, I've still got 5 points going around the outside. If you've got 6, it still works. Then after my straight lines, I'm going to do the lovely C curve to make my buttercup. Then I'll add an extra bit of drama inside the middle, with some lines that just radiate out from the orb with a little rounding at the bottom. Rotate your notebook. It's certainly an easy way to add the same repetitive stroke as you're going along. If you find that you can fit in a different number of those little strokes going out because you've got a slightly bigger petal, that's fine. Roll with it. It will still work. Then we're going to do some little triangles coming out between the buttercup petals. And each one I will fill with drama. Well then, aura, each one. I love this blossoming style of tangle because you can rotate so often and do the same repetitive stroke each time round. If you would like some guide dots, Pop them in now, just where your points of your arrows are pointing to. And then from the centre of that buttercup petal, just leave from the centre of it and head towards your point. Then next try your tethered auras. Perhaps you like to draw away from yourself. Just rotate your notebook to whichever way you find is easiest for you. Add your pollen. Sometimes when I'm doing a very simple monotangle like blossom that doesn't quite fill all the spaces, perhaps some of your little blossom can just leap out and float away in the wind. And finally, I'll add an orb inside the middle. If you've gone slightly bigger with this orb in the middle and the whole blossom pattern here, you may also want to just add a small smile of white just on the other side of where you left a white orb. Almost like you were drawing a single caviar, which is another tangle, just inside the middle there. And then we'll start some shading. There's a couple of ways to shade this. Just because we're looking for a center point here, we can highlight the shading by just going around that middle orb. And then using our tortillon to gently blend out the graphite. However, another way of creating some very obvious shading is to actually shade a complete area. So perhaps take one of your tethered auras and actually shade in one whole section. Even when I do this, I will still use my tortillon. I'll get all the graphite down gently inside the area that I want to fill. Once I have that graphite down in between the spaces, I'll use my tortillon and smush. Gently push the graphite into the texture of the paper. It's amazing the difference in the smooth finish it makes just by using the tortillon. With the lovely point on my tortillon, it's really useful to be able to point it into the thin angles that I've created with this blossoming tangle blossom. If you've done more than one blossom on your page, you might choose to shade a different area this time round. Although I've used the centre shading here to just highlight the middle of the tangle, we're keeping it centre there. I'm going to do a different type of shading around the petals and the outside. With a slightly bigger area with the graphite, it's probably easier to see how the tortillon will gently smooth in the graphite. I think you can see the bottom two here have a much smoother finish than the ones on the top, just by using this lovely tool. So there we have a blossom. And now to today's prompt. My favourite place is. Where is your favourite place? 3, 2, 1. So here is Blossom. I have a lovely little inspiration here given to me by my children. Here we have a little crocheted blossom. You can see how cute it is, and tiny tiny with its little crocheted flowers. This one has a little pearl inside, just a bit like the pearl that we've drawn inside our blossoms today. And this has little leaves on it as well. So instead of flying blossom, you might choose to take some of the leaves from yesterday. I can this, and I can too, and perhaps add them in the background of your tangle. The prompt here, my favourite place is. Have a little bit of a thought today and write down where your favourite place is. Meanwhile, I'll see you again tomorrow.